Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Apologies for a lack of video over the past couple of weeks. It was Easter bank holiday weekend last weekend, and I was a very busy boy. Liam was a busy boy, and we didn't have time to watch the episode, let alone talk about it. But we have done both today, or at least we're going to do both today. I hope you've watched the episode.
I have.
Good.
Can confirm.
If you're new to the channel, this is the video series where we watch episodes of Doctor Who from 2005 onwards, New Who, as it were, even though we're 7 series in at this point, and it's probably not necessarily New Who at this. It's now just Doctor Who.
This episode's 11 years old.
Yes, exactly. So it's not even new to us, let alone at the time. But yes, this is Series 7, Episode 3. A Town Called Mercy. This one sees the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith, with his companions, Amy and Rory, Karen Gillan and Arthur Darvill. They show up to a very stereotypical cliche Western town, and there's a gunslinger. It is called Mercy. There's a gunslinger that's not letting anyone in or out, except for conveniently the 3 main characters. They get let in, it's fine. And why?
They said.
And they do explain it. It's fine, but you know,
stop criticizing Doctor Who.
I will criticize Doctor Who now. And
that's what we're here to do.
They have to figure out
praise it.
Why? Yeah, we can only be negative about Doctor Who. We can't be positive. We have to be like everyone else. We have to criticize.
If we want the views, we have to hate it.
You're not wrong. But you know, I think this episode has a lot to like about it. I think it has some issues, I think. But overall, I had fun with it. What did you think?
I very much enjoyed it as well. I do think it's my least favorite of the 3 so far.
Yeah,
but that's only really for me because I think there's like a 5-minute period where I was kind of like, yeah, get on with it.
I'm bored.
After Isaac died, it's not kind of 5 minutes after that. I was like, yes, we know where this is going. Get on with it. But you know, I haven't really felt that dip with the first 2, so it's like maybe that kind of sets it part of it. But I still really enjoyed it a lot. And I was about to just say, here's my first positive, but we've gone to that because technically it's your turn first this week. So
it is this week.
Yeah, I very much still enjoyed it. It's another really solid entry into Series 7. Continuing with like a very different theme and approach for each episode, and you know, I think Doctor Who doing a Western episode, long overdue, certainly for New Who to do it because they hadn't prior to this. I think it is a good idea, and it's cool that we at least got something I would say pretty decent out of the concept and everything. Some good kind of sets of characters in there, admittedly mainly the characters we already know and love. But yeah, I liked the story behind it. There was a few scenes in there that I was like, I do not remember this at all. I guess for good and bad reasons. There's one scene I was like, oh, I didn't even realize that Amy talked about that in this episode. That's great. What a great scene. So, you know, still plenty of surprises. And that is why it's fun to kind of revisit episodes that maybe I don't tune into or think about as much as some others. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of, I say fun. It's, you know, kind of a very tragic war consequences story, as Doctor Who often is in the new series, I guess, because of the Doctor as a character with the new series. But yeah, I think it was a really fun episode. I very much enjoyed it, even if I feel like it didn't maybe match. It didn't do fun as well as Dinosaurs on a Spaceship, but I don't think it did serious as well as Asylum of the Daleks did.
Yeah,
that would be my thoughts. See you next week.
Yeah, fair enough. See you later. Unfortunately, we have to go on a little bit more than that because
we don't have to.
We don't have to, but the format of this show, which we've now settled into, God knows how many episodes, is we have around 3 positives and around 3 negatives. And as Lee mentioned, it is my turn to go first this week. My first one, it's always one of your positives, but it's Matt Smith for me.
That's my first positive too.
Yay!
Hooray! We're back.
We're coming off the back of the last episode where he was still pretty, you know, angry boy, but he also had that very goofy element about him, I think, in the past episode, whereas that's not there in this one. It's very much more like your baseline Doctor and then angry, rather than all the way up and all the way down.
where he's chewing on the toothpick, and after that, it's like,
Yeah.
I will.
After that, he's pissed. He is pissed off. Once he meets the horse, it's all downhill from there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really like it. I like the sort of, I think that him in a screen when he's realizing who Jex is, that just acting with his face, and when he comes back and he's just like so calm, and then when he's like, oh, sit down, and then he's just like, he flips at that moment when he just doesn't. I'm like, oh, okay. And even like you see Amy, whether Karen Gillan did it intentionally or whether it was a genuine reaction to Matt Smith on set, but she jumps as in like, oh, okay. And I just like how even before that you can kind of see that he's seeing through what Jex is and the sort of words he's saying. He doesn't quite believe him, and that's why he diverts from the plan to go to the spaceship and be like, oh, I'm actually gonna sneak a peek. And we'll come on to it with into my negatives, but I'm very much on his side of kill him. I'm like,
absolutely,
just kill Jex. There's no moral conundrum here. Just give him to his species and let that happen. But we'll come on to that. I just think that he delivers it all really well. And when he like kind of has to begrudgingly save his life, you can see the sort of annoyance on him and sort of the acting range that it gives. And there's not, as with last week, he had more of a range in terms of he could show the fun side of him, with a goofy like, oh, I've got a Christmas list or whatever, and then to the dark seriousness of killing the man. Whereas this one, I think, although there's less of a range, I think he shows the anger better in this one. I think he's more not subtle with it, but nuanced, I think. And I think that again, I always like an angry Doctor because I think that's when we get the best character moments more often than not. And I think this one is especially good because it also shows, if he's left to his own devices, what happens, he kind of cuts himself off and becomes very singular. And we sort of see that again further down the series as well. But yes, I really like him, and that's why Matt Smith is my first positive. So he's yours?
Samesies, yes. It is the unspoken positive as always, but when you want to shout him out, you need to shout him out. And yeah, I kind of agree with everything you were saying. I like that the way he portrayed his anger with Solomon in the last one is kind of a basic level of anger, I guess, really, because Solomon was your basic level villain you just need to hate. Whereas there's a bit more kind of layers, I guess, to what they're trying to do with Jex. So his anger towards Jex is also a lot more layered and kind of, so angry he's almost quiet for the most part, and then Jex kind of pushes his buttons, being like, "Thank God they had me and not you. Like, you're just asking for death there."
Yeah, I'm like, come on, what are you doing there, man? Just
you goddamn fool.
Literally quit while you're ahead. Like, just stop.
Idiot. For a smart man, he's an idiot.
He certainly is.
But yes, I really like how they kind of 11 has lots of different levels to his anger and stuff like that, and I agree. I'd be like, kill him. I do get where Amy comes from with that, and they need someone to obviously be on the other side of that fence alongside Isaac, I guess. But she kind of saw what becoming an assassin did to her daughter, and she even talks about that with Jex in this episode. So she's still probably quite shook by what she did to Kovarian in that other world. She's like, we need to step away and not come back from that. So I get where she's coming from, but also like, kid, I don't care, kill him. Especially when we come off a Doctor who killed the bad in the last episode. I do like that they are kind of continuing him down that downward spiral with this, and the fact that he's not seeing Amy Rory that often. They kind of keep hammering that home even in this episode as well. So I think it makes sense. A lot of people I think maybe just tuned into this one having not watched all of the show up to this point, and that's when everyone on Twitter was complaining like, "Oh, the Doctor was too angry and out of character." I'm like, this is what his arc's been in this season so far. Like, calm down. So and it's like Amy pointed out, any other day if he had a full-time companion, he wouldn't be making these decisions. No. We do have the Doctor regenerates, like no second chances, and then proceeds to give many second chances. So I like that he kind of pushing away from that, and his justification for the line is like, all the people that die because of my mercy, and like mentioning the Daleks and the Master and stuff. That was all really great. And Matt Smith just does that brilliantly. But also he does have some very funny moments in there as well near the start. the toothpick thing I'd completely forgotten about.
Yeah, I'd
was
forgot
great.
about that.
And it was Matt Smith's idea, so that was very cool
Mm.
that he kind of incorporated that. And yeah, he can be a bit of a goofball, and there's that bit where I think he kind of confronts all the people when he becomes the marshal, and they're like, "We want to kill him," and he's like, talks that guy down from shooting him. And then he's like, just turns to Amy Moore, he's like, so he's kind of hiding that anger behind the smirk, as the Doctor often does, and it's quite scary, really. And yeah, just the nuances to the fact that I just really want to like kill him, just kill him, even though if we didn't know the Doctor, we were introduced to him in this episode, but like, yeah, kill him. But we're also like, he's such a good man and a good boy. So I do like the many layers to the episode in that sense, because the Doctor also committed war crimes, probably killed more people than Jex did. But we're like, he's right, and this guy's wrong, kill him.
I think
hypocritical, but I really like that
they've
approached it like that.
I think the idea is that the Doctor he was more of a soldier man, whereas Jex experimented on people. He's more Davros than Doctor, I think.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Which is why there's the anger there as well.
The Doctor Davros. I'm sure we won't see him again in a few series.
Nah.
But yeah, I really enjoyed Matt Smith in this, and this was a bonus positive, but I kind of just include it here. I love Eleven's dark coat. I can't believe he only wears it in this one. It's not the same one of his green one. It's like a darker velvet one. I'm like, that looks so cool. We only got it in this one episode. Sad. But just might as well highlight it when I'm talking about Matt Smith and 11 at the same time. Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. But Matt Smith, shockingly, is fantastic again.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. My second positive, I think, might be a bit of a curveball. But I think it's Arthur Darvill and Rory is mine.
Okay.
I think it's a very underrated performance from Arthur Darvill with his line delivery and just his presence. He doesn't get much. Exactly. He doesn't get much to do in this episode. But I think what he does get.
We'll come on to that.
It's like when they're like, oh, the lights are only 10 years out, and it's like, oh yeah, well, that's what you said when you left your phone charger in Henry VIII's room. And he was like, oh, all right then. And the other one was like where they were like explaining, so we just wait here for the Doctor. He's like, yes, I know, I was in the room when we came up with the plan. I was like, that's excellent line delivery. And I was like, just because it's so self-referential to the episode as well, because obviously the writer knows that the audience didn't know the plan, but they need to have them say it, and it's like, oh, that nice back and forth. And
that could easily fallen flat with a weaker actor.
And it's just every time he was in a scene, I think he stole it most of the time with his performance and what he had. And I think he's not had too much to do, I don't think, in the start of the series. He's very much just been sort of a passenger, and he is to an extent on this one as well. But I do think that when he does have a line, or when he's involved in the thing, even when they're talking about what they should do with Jex, there's a whole thing there where he's just very underrated in this episode. I think in this, probably so far, the series as a whole. And I think having him there as that sort of like calm, grounded presence, I think, he's kind of in the middle of both Amy and the Doctor in terms of being like, right, just chill, not one extreme or the other. And I think he's excellent. And yeah, for me, he just stole the scenes he was in. I wish there was more, but I'll take what I can get in this. But yes, a bit of a curveball second positive, but
it is.
He was just, I just thought he was.
I just think he's neat.
I just think he's neat. And I think if he wasn't there, it sort of loses that element of humor as well, and it's sort of, because I think a lot of the humor does come from him or Matt Smith, and when Matt Smith's being all angry, it's good to have that other side of things. But great, I liked him. He's great.
I like him.
Your second positive.
My second positive is the setting and the location and everything. Basically the Wild West theme, I guess, because it's something new for New Who, certainly at this point in time. In fact, they've been going for 7 years at this point, and they hadn't done a Wild West episode yet. What were they thinking? And the fact that they shot it in Spain.
They had a Wild West book, I think. It wasn't called.
It
wasn't Westworld. It was something else. Hey, it's all canon until it's not.
It's all canon.
It's all canon until they undo it with an episode.
All 8 different Mary Shelley stories. They're all canon. definitely.
Yeah. Especially that
yeah.
story of Martha is still canon, even though they've now done a big finish. It's fine.
When Sarah J. Adventures said that Tegan and Nyssa got married, yeah, that's canon. That definitely wasn't undone at all.
Hey, they
you
might
know,
have been married. They just might have got unmarried.
definitely not. Sure, definitely. Yeah. But anyway, Doctor Who continuity aside, I wanted to talk about continuity in this episode. Talk about how Matt Smith's Marshall badge goes all over the place. The same scene after he puts it on, but it's just that one scene.
Dear.
But I think it just fell off, and they had to. They're running out of time.
Put it
anyway, the setting and location. They obviously filmed on like a classic set where they filmed a lot of like classic Western films and stuff. They used the same place, which is cool. I just think it looks neat. I really like how it really does set it apart as an episode in itself, but also in regards to what Series 7A is doing with all this different like themed episodes and stuff. I think it was a cool one to go for if you're gonna like have one set in the past and stuff. It feels like, oh yeah, it makes sense that they should do that at some point. And I think they tied it nicely into the theming with like the villain being the gunslinger and everything like that. I thought it all worked very well, but I think just the place looked great. I like how it was realized as a world. I like, it is a very much lived in place because it's a set that's been there for decades and decades and decades. So, it is very authentic in that regard. And I think it looks all the better for it. So yeah, I just really like the choice to have like a Wild West themed episode. And they kind of lean into a lot of the tropes as well, for better or worse. We'll get on to that. But regardless, I did enjoy the choice to kind of have an episode set in this place and with that theming. And even Murray Gold's music has kind of got some Western twangs to it, if that's even an expression. It is now. I said it. So yeah, I think that was a very well realized location for the story, and it looked great.
Yeah, that's fair. One of my additional positives is the set design, because I think it's neat, isn't it? Isn't it just neat?
I just think it's neat.
It is neat, but I do agree. I think I know that I think there's some extent where Westerns don't get done as much because they were so overdone, back in like the 50s and 60s where they just kept going. I think even Doctor Who at the time in Series 1 there was a Western episode, wasn't there? The very first series of Doctor Who, I think.
Maybe there's a fun fact about it.
And
also a lot of those Westerns from back in those days have aged very, very poorly. The idea of cowboys and Indians is a very outdated concept. So,
yeah. But yeah, I did like it. I think it was great. I think the set design and the costume design was great as well. Speaking of costume design and what looks great, my second positive. God no, my third positive. My second positive is the gunslinger themselves. Yay! Look at that. I just put gunslinger is cool. I think it's neat. It's there was a real risk it could have looked like Crichton from Red Dwarf in this, where he's got like the block head. And to some extent you have to be like, okay, I can tell that's fake, but I appreciate where you're coming from, and I'm glad you've done this practical costume and practical design rather than making it some CGI thing.
Yeah, and this is literally a man who's been cobbled together, so kind of they can get away with it looking like that.
Yeah, and the whole gun arm's great. The way he's shot is great. The way he teleports in, like the first time you sort of see him, he's sort of slowly coming towards you out the back. I think it's excellent. The character itself and sort of this man who effectively just wants peace and wants to be like rid of what he's become, but he's a Cyberman if the Cybermen had their emotions still, effectively. And maybe there's comparisons that you can make all sorts there with all sorts, but I like his motives. I think his motives are fine. I'm not like, oh, he shouldn't go and fair enough. If somebody had done that to me and out of my control, I'd be pretty pissed and I'd be like, I'm gonna kill you no matter what.
And the only other person he didn't even kill Jex in the end, but even Isaac's death was an accident because Isaac was an idiot. Because
throughout the whole thing he's making a conscious effort not to kill innocent people. You know,
Yeah.
literally, he disengages from anyone that's not, or even like 84% chance of hurting an innocent. I think it was when he was going
Yeah.
after Isaac and Rory. So
And
just
even when he
that,
turns off that programming in the church, he still chooses not to shoot any of them.
yeah, and I think the character's great, the design's great. We'll come on to the design of maybe Pete and sort of it very much felt like they got, yeah, look at this, and I went, here's the other design of the alien. It was like, oh, okay, convenient
He
for the
needed to
plot where
fit
they could just
in.
paint it on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he needed to blend in with the people.
yeah, clearly. Yeah, I think he's great. I think the design's great, the character's great, the motive's great, and I like that he sort of stays there and is like this immortal, like, gunslinger sheriff at the end. As in his ultimate, like, what he was built to do was effectively make peace, and bring the war to end. And the fact that his sort of end goal is to keep the peace, I think, is very, very relevant to his character and sort of completes his arc in this episode.
Yeah.
So he's your final positive as well, is he?
He is. I really like his
Wow.
design. He looks really cool. And yeah, I really like his little arc that he goes through as well, and kind of becoming the marshal of the town at the end. All that's really fun. And the final shot of him like wearing the badge and everything, it's great. I like that. The villain does kind of get probably the biggest, most fulfilling arc of an episode, even when he's labeled as the villain, because he's not really. So I like that. I like the kind of sympathetic side that they added to him. They could have easily just had like a fun cowboy episode where there's a cyborg trying to shoot people. He's like, well, I want this town because I'm lonely. I don't know.
Like Westworld, I assume. I think I've seen a bit of Westworld. I think that's that's basically what happens in Westworld, isn't it?
That show I've definitely
cowboys.
seen.
I think cyborg cowboys go wrong and then try and kill people. That's effectively it.
It is like a cowboy thing, isn't it? I don't even know. I haven't seen it, and I never will see it because I cancelled it. So
yeah.
I don't want to watch a TV show and then not get an ending. Sadly,
no,
sorry, streaming has killed TV. Sorry. But anyway, real world issues aside, yeah, I really like the Gunslinger. Of like the lineup of characters in Series 7, I do think he's one of like the standout, kind of silhouettes, if you will. And yeah, I do like the kind of tragic side to his character. Very much kind of, I think they even say that I wanted to go like a Frankenstein's monster kind of route with him, and obviously they did, and I think that worked very well. And a very Doctor Who-y thing to put a Frankenstein monster in like a Wild West setting, and it still works. All very well and good. And yeah, I do think he's one of the standout characters of the episode for sure. Really like everything they do with his arc. I feel sorry for the actor wearing all that makeup and shit in Spain.
God, yeah.
For like 2 weeks of filming in that town when he's out in the open, he must have nearly died. Couldn't be me. So respect to him as well. And yeah, I thought he was a really effective kind of not villain, but also kind of villain. Very well realized, tied into the episode's kind of setting and theming really well. And yeah, I just think he's neat.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And I never think of him as the villain of the episode. I always think of Jax as the villain. I think he's just more of the character. But yes, my sort of additional one is in my notes I put Pete brackets Jax, because throughout the whole thing I'm just writing Pete, because he's Pete from Gavin and Stacey, and I just couldn't get it out of my head. So I was like, Pete, kill Pete.
It's
Pete's
so
bad.
funny. His voice is completely different. But I'm still like, it's Pete.
It's Pete.
You sound like Pete.
Oh God. But yeah, I liked his character. I think there's one bit where it's like where they realize he's a bad guy. It's like, oh, we've got him now. He's doing the evil voice. So I was like,
war hero.
Yeah. I was like, oh God, he's a bad guy now. But yeah, I quite liked him. I think it was a camp-ish villain, but it was at the same time it had that sinister, like you could believe that this man would, convert people into war machines if he had the chance. And I just think he deserves a shout out because I quite liked him, and he got an issue with how he sort of just dies, because I feel that's just he just sort of
the doctor's like, you can't make up your mind, can you?
yeah he just kind of scapegoats himself, and he's like, oh whoops, guess I'll kill myself. And I'm like, oh well, that's not fair. But other than that, I think he's a good character, and the speech he gives to the doctor, when he's back in the prison cell, I think is really good. And even when he riles him up to sort of get him to almost kill him
Get him.
is excellent. I think it's delivered really well, and he's more than a match for Matt Smith. So what are your additional positives, if any?
Obviously, Eleven's coat. We've already talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had Jex as well. I was really torn on him at first because like they can't really commit to what they want him to be, what they want him to do, but also like that's the whole point of his characters. Like he even says like it doesn't make sense to you that I'm both of these things. That I'm not just like the mad scientist. I'm not just like someone who wants what's best for my race and stuff like that. So it was like, oh, that's literally the point. I'm supposed to feel that way about him, even if he is a bit flip floppy all over the place. Like, work out what you want, man. So yeah, I did enjoy his character a lot. I feel like if we didn't also have the gunslinger in there, I'd be like, no, this is too much. This is too cheesy.
Yeah.
Like, I want some more of a bite to the episode. Obviously, his character is designed with the gunslinger in mind, so they're never going to do that. But yeah, I think Adrian Scarborough gives a really good performance in that role. You really do want to snap that smarmy little face. So yeah, I enjoyed him. And then my final one is the scene between Amy and Jex, where they're talking about, is she a mother? Is he a father? Stuff like that. So I'd completely forgotten that Amy actually has some room to talk about the trauma she went through in series 6.
Yeah.
And like, the fact that he could tell she was a mother, and she's like, well, it's pretty fucking complicated, which is an understatement of the year. But I do like that, she was very open and very proud to just immediately talk about it, which is quite sweet to show how far she's come in regards to that. And she's kind of made some peace with how it all went down. It was just, I think it really stuck out because I was like, oh, I don't remember that scene at all. That was really nice. So I think I was kind of talking about, in the Sound of the Daleks, and like, she never had a chance to kind of deal with anything that they were going on with. And instead of talking about that, they did the stupid divorce thing. But they actually do kind of address that in this episode with that brief scene. So that was nice. Again, we still don't get to see what Rory thinks about any of this, which is a shame. And this would have been a really good chance to maybe get him involved in that scene or have him talk about it. So he has a lot more to do in the episode. But never mind. It's 45 minutes. And also, we'll talk about Rory a bit later on, I guess. But also, I'm very torn on the idea because, like, he is a lot more than Amy. I think he's like, I'm kind of done doing this now. I'm kind of done with this life. Yeah. So it makes sense that he's not involved in any of it. And he's like, whatever happens. But also like, so it makes perfect sense that he kind of, but we can talk about that in a bit. But yeah, I really liked that scene between Amy and Jex because I went into this episode thinking, wow, Amy and Rory have nothing to do here. They're going to be like spare parts. And that's partially true, but I do actually think Amy has a lot because she is obviously the one who's like, no, you shouldn't be doing this. This isn't how you do things. And Rory obviously just has the same opinion as the Doctor, so like he can't really add much to that discussion. But yeah, that scene was a real standout for me. I really enjoyed that, and I thought Karen and Adrian were very good in that scene. So there you go.
Yeah, fair enough. Unfortunately, we must now talk about the negatives of the episode. My first one, and we've touched on it already, is that I just think Amy was wrong. I know
the woman was wrong.
No,
the only one of two women in this episode wrong.
I know on a moral level she is right. I can.
And it is what the Doctor would normally do and does in like 95% of episodes. But also, no, Amy.
Yes. But but also I'm like, look, he's a bad guy in the first place. Just kill him. I'm like, can you not see what he's done to this man? But then
if
also
he was
at the same time,
if he was truly redeemed at this point, then I guess. But he was like, he seemed quite proud of what he did until like,
it very much feels like he only gave electricity and healed people of cholera so that he had the excuse of, oh well, I did this for you, you can't kill me. That's always the impression I got for him. And at the same time, Amy's like, oh, who are you to like judge if we should or shouldn't kill him or whatever? And I'm like, okay, yeah, fair enough. But in that case, give him to the gunslinger who's his own species and let him decide. That's like that's fair. That's fair if you give him to him and let him face that kind of justice. That's perfectly fine. And that's sort of what the gunslinger says to the Doctor when he like climbs out of the little pod. He's like, give him to me. He'll face my justice, of our people or whatever. And that's the fair result. If the Doctor was going to kill him straight up like he did Solomon, fair enough. I'd be like, okay, maybe you shouldn't have this decision, but it should be up to the gunslinger to either kill him. You should try and convince him to take him home or whatever, but it should be Amy doesn't have the right, the same as the Doctor doesn't have the right to decide his fate. So I think she's kind of hypocritical in that aspect. Sure, don't kill him, but at the same time, don't rob the person who was wronged of the chance of getting justice, his justice, because it comes on, as I sort of mentioned, he in effect gets the justice but doesn't get the satisfaction of the justice because of obvious reasons. But yeah, so I think there's a bit of, it's not just that Amy's wrong because I want to see him die, it's because there's a slight, I do want to see him die, but it's hypocritical as well in that she takes the choice away from the person that should have the choice. But it's fine, I know it's the moral. I appreciate the moral of the story, the whole should you, shouldn't you, if at what point does somebody become irredeemable and that kind of thing. There's a similar thing with the doctor's daughter, where the doctor doesn't kill Matey Boy because he killed his daughter. It's the whole
source.
But at the same time, the doctor's within his rights to seek the justice because it's him, it's his daughter, he can do what he wants with that. But yeah, he's already killed someone, Amy. You were fine with that then. You didn't bring it up then as an issue, so
she might not know he did it.
No, it's true, to be fair. No, yeah, but still,
I sent him off in this ship.
I get the point, but I still think it's I think it's wrong either way. So what's your first negative?
Oh yes, only my first. I feel like I understand bringing in the Wild West tropes into a Wild West story, of course, like it has to be done, but maybe then don't make the Wild West story as serious as this one is. I feel like they kind of clash a bit, and I'm kind of like, oh, cringe. Maybe it's just because I'm older now, and like I'm 11 years older than when I first watched this, and I'm not like, hey, cowboys anymore. I mean, I'm always kind of like, yeah, cowboys are cool, but Red Dead Redemption 2 is great.
Cowboys versus aliens.
Cowboy, baby. Cowboys versus aliens. Yes, that's great. But I do kind of feel like, just to be, some of it was a bit cringe, and the classic like, I'm the marshal, I'm gonna reveal my badge. I'm like, and then when the doctor does it again, and he's like just standing there like this, what's wrong? Oh god, kind of cringing internally, and just because like it's not like, it's a Wild West setting, but it's not really a Wild West story in a way. So I don't know if those elements work as well, maybe kind of undermine it a bit. I'm just like, I don't know. I think some of it, gels well together. Obviously, the doctor just riding a horse around. He's making use of, what he's got. That makes sense, and that is, riding around on a horse. It's a Western trope. So I think it's because it's also done well in this episode with some of those Wild West things that I think when it's like a bit more on the cringy side, and it's like, ooh, maybe they just make too much of a moment of it sometimes, and I'm like, oh, cringe. So I think there's kind of a clash between what the episode wants to go for and versus what it actually is in terms of the script at times for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think there are some, you can have the cliches at the start, when they come into the Western theme, and have the walking into a town and tumbleweed, and walking into the bar and everyone turning and being quite, I think that's all fair with that. And even the sort of the Mexican standoff as well, where that's fine as a cliche, but I think it's just the other bits are a bit unnecessary. But what can you do?
Could you resist it? Probably.
Yeah, it's if they'd done a Western episode before this one, I think maybe they would have avoided it more. But because this is like the one they haven't done for a while, they feel like they've got to get them all in. So my second negative is, we've already spoken about it slightly, is the death. I've put Pete's death, but it's Jex's death. So I mean, first of all, it's like, if you're going to do that in the first place, why make this town suffer for weeks and weeks to then just go and kill yourself?
I don't buy that he's suddenly like, oh, it's just time to face. I think he just wanted the easy way out, to be honest. But
yeah, and it's the whole thing of, when it's going to get dark now, but when like people that are accused of like heinous crimes commit suicide before like they're trialed and charged, it's a similar sort of vibe to that, in like it's the coward's way out of not facing the justice.
I think because he talks about like, facing all the souls that he's responsible for, and like they believe like they would be facing all of those, and like I think in his very selfish mind, he's like, well, if I just kill myself rather than be killed, so I'm reluctantly here facing all you souls now. I think he thinks that might be easier.
Yeah, there's that element, and it's kind of, it's it's like, if you're going to kill yourself anyway, why not, at least if you're doing it for the right reasons, which he's saying he is,
You want
why not
orders?
yeah, literally.
Kill yourself.
Like, why don't you just, if you want to be redeemed and you want to be seen in like, I'm making the right decision, just hand yourself into it. Just let him do it. It
Yeah.
makes no difference. And that's, it plays into the whole thing of like, he's always got this like feeling that he's doing everything to try and benefit himself, whether that's saving the townspeople or, you know, trying to get Amy on his side, that kind of thing. You know, it always feels like he's trying to do what works out for him. And I just think the death is just, it's so flip-floppy, and I think it's unsatisfactory for both, you know, the audience and the gunslinger, especially as it's like delivered over an audio speaker as well. It's not, you know, there's no confrontation. It's kind of a bit of a damp squib of an ending type thing, where it's just sort of goes, oh, okay then.
Yeah, it was very much, in terms of like his character, it was very much, oh, there's 5 minutes left, he needs to die.
Yeah, but then even so, you could just be like, okay, he's gonna just be like, you know, whether you could have had it with the gunslinger be in the church or about to kill the doctor, and he comes out and be like, no, stop, I'm here, just take me.
He dives in front of the little girl when she's about to get shot or something, and like, oh, well done, you did it.
Something like that. But yeah, so I just think his death was a bit, they could have done it better if they wanted him to be actually redeemed, which I guess they tried to.
Yeah. They just wanted to blow up that ship and make it look cool.
The little tic tac, they just wanted to blow up the little tic tac.
The ship's an egg.
Even that, the explosion over the building was too close to where the actual spaceship was. So never forgive that one. That's fine. That's not it.
Never forgive it.
Never forgive.
Doctor Who's biggest crime.
0 out of 10. The best thing ever. Oh, what's your second negative?
I mean, we've kind of touched on this a bit as well. Rory's kind of a spare part, but it's one like, it's not my number one, because I'm like, I understand, and what we do get of him is, you know, good. But the fact, and like you said, like, he's very underrated in this episode, and like, because he is very good with these characters and in this setting, and like the vibe that he's kind of giving off. Like, it's a shame that we don't really get more of it.
When we see him, he's great, but we don't see him a lot.
Yeah, but also, you know, he had a whole thing with his dad in the last episode, and he was kind of focused, and Amy took the back seat, so it makes sense for them to swap it in this one. So, you know, but nonetheless, I'm sad that we didn't get to see more Rory, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I always want to see more Rory. And I'm sure we will next week. We certainly will see more.
We will in the 60th anniversary in November.
Oh, could you imagine? Absolute scenes if he comes back. Why not?
Hey. Imagine if Matt and Karen don't come back, but
he does. Arthur Dowell does. Hey, I'd allow it.
I'd
allow it. It's fine.
I'd be okay with it.
Oh god. So my final negative. It's one that I had last week. There's another. He's the Doctor. Let's get on. Again. We literally did it last week with it's the Doctor. And I was like, oh, for God's sake, because it's the cold open as well. I was like, all that's left is the Doctor. It's like, whoa, and then it's not him, and then even the people in the town like, it's the Doctor.
We have an era of catchphrases. We have an era of recurring gags, and then we have an era of over explanation.
Yes, yeah, and I don't. It's probably going to happen tomorrow, next week, for all I know. Tomorrow. It
happens so much. We're not even watching
it might happen tomorrow. Yeah, probably. But it probably will happen like the next one or the one after, because it'll be like, it's the Doctor, and then it'll be like, side note, an actual Doctor. Because I know Rory works at the hospital, so they'll probably do a thing like, the Doctor needs to see you, and they'll come in. It'll be an actual Doctor. I don't know, but it's just find a new recurring gag, please.
Well, they will.
It'll be Doctor Who soon. It'll be like, and then that'll be.
I mean, I suppose it's a good thing that, you know, one gag is one of your main negatives of an episode. I guess that is a nice reflection.
To put
I think positive spin on it.
Yeah. It's more that it's overused than it's in here. Like, if we hadn't had this already last episode,
it's a shame it's 2 episodes in a row for sure.
Yeah, and if we didn't have it then, I think it's happened a lot recently. Even you could argue in the Sign of the Daleks does the Doctor Who type thing, but that one I think is used sort of sparingly enough, maybe once a season, if that.
And that is like where the whole arc's kind of going as well. That's the question hidden in plain sight. So it makes sense that you want to be using it.
Yeah, but just having the sort of or they're coming for the Doctor again. Psych, it's a different Doctor. I'm like, oh, every time. But
it's one for the casuals, isn't it?
yeah, it's fine. I mean, yeah, but it was just annoying. I mean, I'm hoping there won't be one next week, but it's frustrating because it's a cold open that sort of takes it away from me. So I'm like, oh,
it takes
you could just
away.
end it. Yeah, no, you could just end it with.
It could be worse. It could be from
yeah, it could be. Yeah, you could just end it as like, oh, there's just one left, and then like I don't know, it pans over and you see the town, something like that. You don't need to say the Doctor and then whatever. But
yeah, if I were on a Doctor episode, I wouldn't be able to resist doing it either.
No, and I get it. I do get it. It's just from a viewing point of view when we're watching them all sort of this condensed, not over the 7 years it would have been. You can tell that they're
we're not just watching them casually, like we're watching them to kind of analyze them as well.
Yeah, but
you are going to pick up on more.
It is a nitpicky thing, but it's a thing that has annoyed me. So what's your final negative?
My final negative is the bloody little girl with the books. She's kind of fucking mad, but also that ties into I don't think we needed the narration at the start and end.
Yes, that's one of my additional ones is the narration.
Absolutely nothing. And even like if it was the little girl at the end, and it's like, okay, I guess the Titans. But then the narrate's like, even my great grandmother was just a little girl when he arrived. So it's not even her. Like, why are you giving it a focus then? It doesn't add anything. It's weird. I think the idea of like the gunslinger being described like the Doctor would be blah 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 and all of that. It's nice and it does kind of round off the episode in a nice way. I don't know how they'd end it otherwise. But it also doesn't really. It doesn't need to be there, does it?
But you don't need it at the start. You could just have the girl like look at the gunslinger on the hill and then just have.
But also, that little girl deserved to be shot because she would have got them all killed. So, quite frankly, execute her.
Oh, well, Doctor Who isn't shy of killing kids. We've seen that before, so
that's true.
But yeah, I do agree that the narration at the start and the end, it very much felt like they needed just like a whimsical storybook type padding either side. Maybe it was like 2 minutes long.
Is it like a Wild West trope that I just don't know about because I don't watch?
I mean, maybe. I mean, it could be, but from the modern westerns I've seen, it's not a thing. So
I'm sure it was trying to be.
Trying
to evoke a modern western.
Who knows? Who knows? I guess I'll have to rewatch the newest Magnificent Seven again and see what happens in that, which I maintain was a good film. If you've never seen it, recommend Magnificent Seven.
I haven't watched the original either.
No, neither have I. So I mean, the original.
I need to watch the Magnificent 1 through 6 first. So
yes, good idea. Yeah, and the Hateful Eight afterwards.
Well, I've watched that. Watch that with you, fake friend.
Yeah, I know. That like 4-hour long film.
It's so long, wasn't it? When they start doing chapters, and then I'm like, we're 2 hours in, it's still chapter 3.
Tarantino, please stop this. Stop the
please end it.
Oh God. Anyway, my additional sort of negative alongside the short and the start and the end narration is the village people were one-dimensional.
Village people.
I wrote it down. I was like, I don't know what to call them.
Yeah, I mean, they are the village people.
Yeah, they are the village people.
The residents of Mercy.
They were quite one-dimensional. I mean,
oh man,
the episode would be better if they were all in like. I mean, to be fair, if one of them was just.
That'd be very stereotypical. Yeah. That would have aged very, very poorly.
Oh God.
That'd be a good old JK if they'd done that.
Oh God, could you imagine? But yeah, I mean, the church guy, he's fine. The Reverend. Okay, I don't think
people should answer for their crimes. Yeah, they're very one-dimensional.
Yeah, the Reverend was fine. He had a bit to do. I'm taking Isaac out of that. I don't include him in the village people. Even though he's got the mustache for it, I don't agree. I don't agree. Yeah, he should be in. He's the. Oh God!
Imagine being kicked out of the village people. Embarrassing.
But yeah, I think he's the exception to this. I mean, the guy who's like measuring up for the suit at the start, fine, but that's a cliche as well with westerns. That's very Back to the Future 3, where he's measuring him suit and like that. But they're just there to be. Oh yeah, they're gonna die when they look perfectly fine. There's no like, oh, we've lost 3 people. There's no real. I never felt the threat, and they never sort of looked like
They
were
should
in
have
trouble.
starved themselves before they shot this episode.
Yeah, right.
Like, commit.
God, where's the commitment to this 45-minute episode?
God.
Unacceptable. But yeah, I guess that's the whole thing. You can't really do a whole episode with like the whole village and getting in and giving them all characters and backstories, because then you'd be here forever and you could do a whole series based on that. But they're just there. They're
especially
cannon
when
fodder.
none of them added any arguments that we weren't already hearing from the main characters anyway.
No, definitely not. They're just there to be ooh, and then that's it.
Oh, I do like it's like almost 19. They're just like, you're 18 then. I hate it. That's such a pet peeve when people say that.
Oh God, terrible.
He's 24 months. Your child is 2.
2 years old. He's 2 years old. Yes. Have you got any additional negatives?
No, I didn't really. I kind of put like, they can't really commit either way with Jex and what he wants and stuff, but that is kind of like, I guess it's the point. But yeah, I do agree with you about his quick death though.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. It's just he didn't deserve a quick death, is what I'm trying to say.
No, he didn't deserve mercy.
Painful. He did not. Ha ha. Quite literally, in terms of the town's hospitality and a quick death.
Yes.
Now I've got it. I've figured it out. I've figured out the morals behind this story. Easy.
Yeah. Simple.
So, before we give the episode a ranking, have you got some fun facts?
Oh yes, I do. Let's have a look.
Good. I hope so.
I should think so. Right. Let's have a look. Okay, this is the first televised Western story since The Gunfighters in 1966. William Hartnell was the last Doctor to have a Western story. So there you go. And he was the first. Apart from all the many, many Doctors before him, as we've now found out.
Well, that's not canon though, is it?
It's not canon, not my Doctors. Anyway, this is the first episode since Rose to not have its visual effects mainly credited to the Mill. Instead, the credit went to Space Digital. So there you go. I think the Mill still did work on it. They didn't do most of it this time. Lazy.
I don't know if the Mill's practical and the other ones, the Mill's like CGI and the other one's practical, because there's not that much CGI in this.
Yeah, I think they are CGI, the Mill. I do believe.
Yeah. So maybe that's what it was then. They just did the explosion and that was it.
Yeah, that's all they had to do. They had a nice quiet week. Good for them.
Yeah.
Working titles. I mean, they're fairly simple ones, but they included The Gunslinger and Mercy. So
nice.
Either would have worked, but I like the play on A Town Called Malice. I think it's nice.
Yeah.
The unique logo for this episode, in keeping with Series 7A, featured a wooden effect with gunshot holes reflecting the story setting. Blah 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 blah.
Sure.
This is the first episode written by Toby Whithouse to not include the theme of what happens when you leave the Doctor. On the contrary, this episode makes note of what happens when the Doctor is the one left on his own. Whoa. Because he wrote, before this, it was School Reunion, Vampires of Venice, and The God Complex. And his next story is Under the Lake Before the Flood. And you know how I feel about that one.
Yes.
So I can't wait.
That's your underrated episode.
Yes, but unfortunately, that's a long way off because that's like in 2 series time.
Hey, it's not
literally because episode 3 of series 9.
God. Wow.
Yeah, we need to kill Matt Smith before we get to that though, and kill Danny Pink.
Oh no, Danny.
Poor Danny. This is the first of 2 times the Master is mentioned during the 11th Doctor's era. The second being in the Time of the Doctor.
Well, I'm sure Matt Smith will get to meet him. Oh.
He's technically in the same episode as the Master in Deep Breath, with Missy's cameo and his cameo.
That's true.
He never meets until the 60th. We won't see the 11th meet the Master on screen.
Yeah, and I mean, he did have a little cameo in the series 8 finale as well, when they flash back to him on the phone to Clara. So
that's true. You know, the Master did introduce 11 to Clara. So
yeah, so off screen they've met.
They have a connection, but
yes,
sadly not on screen. But that's fine.
Not yet. The 60th is still to come.
Please. It was Matt Smith's idea for the Doctor to have a toothpick in the saloon scene at the start, stating that he thought the Doctor would want to think he looked like a Western hero.
Yep, fair enough.
What a silly goose.
It's true.
He is a goose. The episode was filmed in March 2012 on location in Spain, in Mini Hollywood and Fort Bravo, locations used for many Western films. Filming in Spain was cheaper than building sets in the UK.
There's a
So
surprise.
obviously, that's one. And also, free holiday.
Thanks, Brexit. No, Brexit wasn't a thing then. Thankfully, Brexit wasn't a thing then.
But
God,
it was probably Brexit.
a simpler time.
Oh, those were the days. Anyway,
Oh, God.
so innocent. Didn't realize how awful the world was at that point in 2012. Moffat pitched the idea of a Western to Toby Whithouse to run with his plan for each episode of 7A having a distinct theme. Moffat was also keen to get Matt Smith in a Western setting, believing he was one of the last people you'd expect to replace Clint Eastwood in such a story. So low-key savage from Moffat there, but I suppose not entirely wrong. Someone didn't see Morbius. Whithouse was allowed to develop the story from there, adding in classic Western tropes and a sympathetic villain. He'd never written for a Wild West theme before, but ended up loving doing it. He was advised not to watch classic series serial The Gunfighters for inspiration, being told it was, and I quote, not exactly the jewel in the crown. I concur. I haven't seen The Gunfighters, so I wouldn't know.
I think, yeah, probably fair
if they ever release it, the collection, series 1, they've done season 2, so if they ever do it, I'll check it out, and I'm sure it's terrible. It took actor Andrew Brooke 3.5 hours to have his makeup put on as the gunslinger. The costume also meant he had no use of his right eye while he was wearing it.
Oh, God.
So he punched many people. No, he didn't. That was a lie. Don't see me.
He might have done that, to be fair.
Perhaps. Composer Murray Gold mimicked Western-style scores when writing the music for the episode. Shocking absolutely no one. Ben Browder, who played Isaac, was offered the role without an audition and gladly accepted, knowing that his children watched the show and he'd always wanted to be in a Western. So 2 birds and 1 stone. And also Matt Smith praised Ben Browder working together on the episode and called him the perfect cowboy, which is very wholesome. And finally, Matt Smith was keen to ride the horse himself, and while he was allowed to do so, most of the stunts in the final episode were done by his stunt double. Yeah, Matt, we're filming. you do it, buddy. You're doing great.
You got off the horse, and that was the only scene they kept.
Hooray!
Oh God, fair enough. Excellent fun facts. Out of 10, what are you going to give A Town Called Mercy?
I think I'm gonna give it a solid 7.
Same. A magnificent 7, you might say.
Oh, it was right there. If it was my favorite of all time, I'd have to give it a 7.
Oh God, who could have cared? Could have given it a hateful 8.
That's true.
Oh no. Anyway, yes, 7's all round. A solid episode. Another solid episode. Will next week be solid? It's The Power of 3. Everyone's favorite episode.
I feel so bad for the poor production team.
I am interested in this one.
Me too.
I think I really like the start when they're exploring the cubes and Amy and Rory's life at home. I think it goes downhill slightly when they introduce the threat, the real threat. Because I don't even think it's that much of a threat, is it? It's very much. I think this is where, in this one, you can see more of Chibnall's 13 writing. I think because it's very much like a threat that's not a threat. That's kind of like a.
I will also say they did have to rewrite the ending on set because they.
Because the guy was terrible.
Yeah. He wasn't supposed to be a hologram. He was supposed to actually be a character on set.
Great,
but
love that.
So much of his material was unusable. They had to make him a hologram and give him no screen time.
Wow.
So they came up with you're going to have to just sign the screen on set.
Yeah.
So
wow. So maybe
why the ending's bad is not on the production team's hands.
No, but
maybe there'll be other problems. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm
maybe there'll be other problems.
Yeah, I do. I like the home. The home life. I like the people. I like the whole
life.
The character elements of it, the character side stuff.
Yeah.
Kate Stewart. Is this Kate Stewart's first episode?
It is. It's her debut.
It is. So I'm very excited to see that. I think
Brian's back.
Character. Brian is back. That will be fun.
We've got a Brian Cox cameo. We've got an Apprentice cameo.
Yes. We got the Chicken Song cameo. Which everyone will love.
My dad's ex-girlfriend is an extra in this episode. That'll be fun.
Nice.
Spot her.
But yeah, I think I'm intrigued by it. Hopefully it's not as bad. I don't think it's bad, but I'm hoping it's not as bad as I think it could be.
Yeah, I think because the ending is what the ending is, I think it just kind of, dampens and colors the view of the rest of it, which I'm hoping is still a lot of fun. So, I think like there's a scene of like the Doctor playing the Wii and stuff like that, which I think is it's going to be good fun. There's going to be a lot to love about it. And obviously it's a big crux of Amy and Rory's arc in this first half. And like, should they leave the Doctor for good?
Yeah.
Should they travel with him for good? So yeah, I'm excited to check it out. Of all like part one, this is the one I'm like, I'm really excited to revisit this one just because I don't really.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. And then we're quickly approaching the end of Amy and Rory.
We've got 2 episodes left with them.
Oh,
good God.
Horrifying.
Good God.
But yeah.
Longest serving companions to this point.
For now. For now.
Like, it's Yaz nowadays.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
But soon.
But that will be it for this week. We'll be back with Power of 3 next time, unless Doctor Who news breaks. We're still getting pretty close to the 60th. There could be
only 7 months away.
Yeah, there could be new trailers. There could be new pictures. We do have stuff to talk about. We're just waiting for a few more little bits to come out, and then maybe we'll do a nice big video. But yeah. Either way, we should hopefully be back next weekend. Bye.
Bye.